That was the second film in our 4-hour coast-to-coast town meeting celebrating gay and lesbian pride. Joining me in San Francisco to talk about the questions raised by Out in Suburbia are Pam Walton, producer of the film, Joyce Fulton, a high school teacher who was profiled in it, and Pat Norman, an expert in lesbian and gay health services. Bob?
And here in New York, we have Sarah Schulman, an author whose 4 novels have consistently had lesbian themes. Her most recent novel is People in Trouble. Cheryl Clark is the author of 3 books of poetry, including Living as a Lesbian. She is an activist and assistant dean of students at Rutgers University. And Ann Northrup of ACT UP, who you met in the first panel. Welcome. We have the producer of that film sitting on the panel in San Francisco, and I wondered if any of you would like to say anything to her.
I would.
Please do it.
Yeah, I had some problems with the film. I think at first of all, there was this myth of affluence that really troubled me. I mean, we're living in America where women are still earning half of what men earn, 52 cents to $1. So when you're making your life with other women, you lose access to the kind of money and power that men walk with in the culture. And I felt that this wasn't addressed at all in the film. Secondly, I really had problems with this idealization of American normalcy. You know, there's a superficial white heterosexual middle-class gloss that's put over American culture, but those of us who live in America know that that's not true. And the gay community, one of the great things about the gay community is how diverse it is. You know, we're multiracial, we're cross-class, but we also do have leather dykes with dog collars who ride motorcycles and drag queens, and I think that that's great.
I guess that's not exactly a thumbs up. Pam Walton, would you like to respond to that in San Francisco?
Yes, I hate it. I hate it when people criticize my little video. I think the best way to respond is by saying that I am very, very happy to be here, proud in the truest sense of the word. And if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be sitting here at KQED talking with people in New York about being a lesbian, I would have called you crazy. I was not only in the closet, but I was almost incredibly unconscious. And when I turned 40, it occurred to me that there are hundreds of thousands of lesbians in this country who are just like me. Middle-class backgrounds, living in the closet, incredibly unconscious. And I decided, when I went off to film school at 40, to make a video documentary about that group of women. And I must say I agree completely with the criticism of the woman in New York. This is a very middle-class videotape. I don't believe that it pretends to be anything else. And I believe that it speaks pretty clearly and pretty loudly to the women in this country who are just like the women in it. I hope that no one thinks for a moment that I tried to make a videotape about all of the lesbians that there are in this country. I think Ann Northrup said it the best at the very beginning of this program when she said that we are many communities. And
Pam, let me ask Sarah if that satisfies her, or do you want to respond to that?
And this is just one, just one community. And I'm also very proud to say that I have had the experience of meeting lesbians and showing this video to them who have felt very empowered by it. So along with the criticism from New York, I also have that knowledge, and I'm very happy about that.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, well, thank you for your statement. I just want to say we've been seeing a lot of emphasis on family on this program. And while I think it's really important that every individual has the right to choose to have a gay marriage or to live the way they want to, I think we also have to question why, at this time, this has become the issue for the gay community. At a time when America has been moving very far to the right, we've had a lot of propaganda in the press about pro-family values, and gay Americans are like all other Americans. We're just as susceptible to the messages of the culture as anybody else. And one of my concerns is that if the gay community was divided into privatized, legalistic, private family units, I don't think we could have responded to the AIDS crisis with the incredible breadth that we have when we have an identity as a community. And so while I'm not challenging people's independent decisions, I just think we have to have a broader view of understanding why we're all suddenly moving towards this in this family direction.
Ginger, let's go to San Francisco. Ginger?
Yet many people would argue that there are great risks being taken every day by lesbian women who live in suburbia. Joyce Fulton, did you take a risk in even agreeing to be part of this?
Are you kidding? I mean, I think everybody is in a different place on the spectrum. And there are some of us who are pretty slow. And I'm one of those people. And it took a great deal for me to be in this film. I'm very proud to be in this film. I'm still a teacher in high school, but it certainly has complicated my job. And
how so?
Well, the very first day of school this year, I had 2 kids come in and start hassling me about being in the film and about being a lesbian. 3 weeks later, one of them ran in front of the windows and yelled "dyke" in the window. And I'm a social studies teacher. So it becomes extremely difficult when you're dealing with controversial issues all the time to handle what kids are going through constantly in high school about their own sexuality and what they project onto you. So it's not easy.
We have some critics in the audience as well. Michael Bozia.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say we're critics of the film or critics of the issue being discussed. I think that, first, I'd like to apologize for being a man and kind of interrupting a discussion about lesbians in the suburbs and lesbian issues.
Which you shouldn't have to apologize for.
I still feel like I must. Here in San Francisco in the audience, there's some concern that the program, the structure of the program, is kind of ignoring or glossing over the real issues that are facing gay and lesbian people here in San Francisco and in New York.
In what way, Michael?
Well, as the creator of the film said, this is a representation of a part of gay and lesbian life. It doesn't represent the whole spectrum of the gay and lesbian community. Gay and lesbian families with children don't represent the whole spectrum of the gay and lesbian community. But
well, what's missing?
Well, here we are today, and we're facing anti-gay violence in the streets every day. We're facing homophobia when we go to schools, when we go to work. Our younger brothers and sisters are committing suicide, are attempting to commit suicide, are being harassed by their fellow students. My father doesn't talk to me. My lover's mother doesn't talk to him anymore because he's gay. There's a wide range of issues that face all lesbian and gay people. When we agreed to participate in this panel, this discussion as part of the audience, we thought that this was going to be something for the lesbian and gay community, something for our own empowerment, that we were going to talk about the issues of the 90s, the real issues, domestic partners, hate crimes. Still, we're talking about the legalization of our own sexual lives, but we haven't even gotten to those kinds of concepts. Instead, it seems to be the things that would interest the heterosexual community. How do
well,
gays
I would
and
believe
lesbians...
that this program, in addition to being for the community, is also about educating all communities.
In order
so
to...
let's switch to New York. I understand there's a response there.
Since we were included in that, Cheryl.
I think at this point I'd like to speak directly to the filmmaker and perhaps also by implication to the filmmaker of the film we saw previously. I think that if one is to make a film and to have a decided focus, as your film Out in Suburbia has, a very obvious focus, which is to shatter, well, I'll just put it this way. It does shatter a stereotype that only white, upwardly mobile, heterosexual, nuclear families live in the suburbs. I am happy that lesbians, white, upwardly mobile lesbians live in the suburbs. However, obviously your film lacks inclusiveness, and that's okay. But I wish that when filmmakers choose to focus on already privileged groups, that they would say this is about white and upwardly mobile lesbians in the suburbs. I'm sort of being sardonic and ironic. I also would like to say to the women, one of whom is on your panel in San Francisco, that I do respect the risk you took to be in the film, especially as you are a teacher in high school, I think you said, I don't remember. The risk you did take to be in the film and the risk you have taken to be on this particular TV show. I think it's still important for me and for the gay community to acknowledge the risk that all of us take being out as gay people. I think that's all I want to say at this point.
Anne?
Well, I have about 50 things I want to say. First, that I identify with a lot of the film, having come from an upper middle class WASP suburb, about 6 of them actually, and being in fact a former debutante myself. So I do identify with a lot of the film. I'm also a stepmother to 2 sons who are 23 and 18, and my lover is a high school English teacher in the suburbs and not completely out, which is a source of some tension in the relationship, but we'll get over that. Sure. I'm particularly interested in supporting what the gentleman in the audience in San Francisco said about the fact that heterosexual people, what I assume the hosts of this show in San Francisco and New York are heterosexual. If they're not, please let us know. But I do think that this is a show to educate heterosexuals, and that is disturbing to me. I also thought this was going to be a discussion within those communities that are loosely called the lesbian and gay communities about our issues. And I am unhappy that this is us being educators. I spent a lot of my life as an educator going into schools and talking to kids and having them ask me questions about my life, and I'm very happy to do that because I think misunderstanding is the basis for all our fear and hatred. But I'm also disturbed at the fact that I just heard a few minutes ago that a drag queen in New York who was out on the corner of Christopher and Bleecker having a good time with some people around having a good time was just picked up by 2 police cars, thrown against the cars and carted off to jail for no reason at all. And I'm disturbed that a week ago in New York City, 1,000 lesbian and gay people marching through the streets to ask for an end to violence were unmercifully beaten, trashed, had bottles and eggs thrown at them, and the police not only did very little to help, but ended up beating up one of the marchers. And when I had an informal conversation with some police officers on the subway this week about them, one of those police officers said, well, I'm sure he deserved it. And I'd like to know why we have to live in a world where not only the ignorant fag bashers, but in fact the police officers in authority think it is appropriate to beat us up. And that's what I'd like to talk about.
And you may have answered your question that the heterosexual community needs the education. Ginger? Back to San Francisco. Ginger?
Taking a point of departure here, let's get to Pat Norman. You've dealt with many of these issues as a therapist. Is this, what we're hearing, a call for separatism?
Hardly separatism. I would like to answer a couple of the things that I hear just sort of floating around. And one of the things that I know is that unless we educate people who are ignorant of who we are, of what our lives are about, of the issues that are in fact making them make moral judgments about who we are and why in fact they have the right to beat us up. When you say, why do the police have a right to beat people up who are lesbian and gay, when in fact the Catholic Church, the Vatican as a matter of fact, has put out very, very clearly that everyone has a right to bash on lesbian and gay people because according to the Church, they are in fact immoral. So that I think that it's extremely important for people to recognize, all of us, in our roles as lesbian and gay people in every level of society, and know that in fact we exist everywhere. That is not separatism. That is that we are a part of each and every movement, we are a part of each and every class, we are a part of each and every job possibility throughout the United States, and we touch each and every person, whether they know it or not, in this United States. And what I feel... One of the most difficult things for me to deal with is the intolerance within the lesbian and gay community, I should say lesbian, gay, and bisexual community, towards its own. One of the things that if indeed this is to educate ourselves, then let's be educated that we are in fact a diverse community, as we talk about all the time. We say that we are a diverse community. Then let's believe it. If what we are then going to be able to do through that understanding and reaching out is to begin to work together a little bit better, then we have more people who will stand with us to work against those institutions that will harm us. Unless we do reach out and make those coalitions and let people know who we are and fight the ignorance among everyone, then we will not move. We will not go anywhere. So I believe that this program is extremely important, that we in fact are here for 4 hours on national television and are able to talk to each other is an extremely wonderful thing to be able to do, and a movement that has been made by KQED and one that has been pushed by the lesbian and gay community, and you have answered and you have responded to that push. I think that's exceptional, and I believe that we here are very fortunate to be able to talk about all the issues that are close to all of us.
Thank you, Bill. And perhaps New York has a response.
Well, I do know that Ann Northrop wants to say a quick thing.
Oh, well, I just want to support Pat and say that I wish that what we were discussing tonight were more of our issues among us within the community. But there's also something that I've decided is my revelation for the 90s in the vein of the films we've been seeing, and that is that lesbians have always run everything.
Did you take the next step on that, Ann, in your education of the heterosexual community?
Well, I think I'll let you guys figure that out for yourselves, but I would like to say that I consider this the lesbian 90s. Gay men had their chance last time, but everybody can be an honorary lesbian.
Sarah, did you want to add to that?
Well, we also have some really concrete issues that we have to be focusing on in the next decade. I mean, besides economic issues, obviously, you know, AIDS is something that hasn't really been discussed in detail tonight, but we all know that AIDS is the most pressing issue right now in a lot of our lives. And we've just been faced with new restrictive and very oppressive immigration laws from the INS that the gay community is in the process of responding to. And also now that we're having this phenomena of lesbians and gay men working together, which is one of the most fantastic things that's happened in the gay movement, and that people are really getting to know about each other's lives. We also have to put the issue of reciprocity on the agenda between men and women and a sharing of resources throughout the community. So we have a lot of concrete work to do as well in the next 10 years.
Thank you. We have a person in the audience who wanted to ask a question.
My name is Roma Barron. I'm a member of ACT UP and of Queer Nation, and I just wanted to continue a little bit of discussion on a point that Ann Northrop introduced. The moderators of both panels are being presented as heterosexual in that they're treating the members of the panel as the other, and that's the status quo. And I just also wanted to say that I thought it was a shame in the light of some of our expectations that the moderator in San Francisco, both times one of us introduced our dissatisfaction with the discussion of our own issues, the topic immediately was shuffled away.
Perhaps you could help us briefly by telling us how you felt these 4 hours would be better and more useful to the gay and lesbian community if the moderators were out gay and lesbian television people.
Well, I
Perhaps
think
we
it's
should tell them who the producers are.
Well, we could start there. I think that it's a subject that we began to discuss in the early part of the program, an issue of a model being set up. We're always presented as the other. And particularly on a program like this, it's unfortunate that the moderators couldn't have been chosen from our community.
Okay, let me go to San Francisco for the other moderator. Ginger?
Thanks, Bob. We have Joyce Fulton who'd like to respond to some of the issues that have been brought up. As far as the program itself is concerned, I will not defend my record with the lesbian and gay community in San Francisco, but I would like to point out for our New York audience that our program here has been produced by a gay man. Joyce?
Okay. I wanted to respond to Michael, and I didn't get your name, and the concerns that you had. I don't think anybody can quarrel with what you have said, or some of the people on the New York panel about the seriousnesses of the issues facing us in just many, many, many different ways. But I do support what Pat has been saying about the importance of educating the public. I've been a teacher teaching psychology in a public high school for the last 12 years, and I can tell you as evidence from students over those 12-year periods that there has been a dramatic shift in the attitude of students toward gay and lesbian people. Much more positive acceptance, much more support, and part of that is because many of them have personal experience with meeting someone who is gay or lesbian. And if there's nothing else that can come out of this program, my hope would be that those of you in the audience and out there watching it would maybe come out to 1 or 2 more people and begin to let people around you know that you are gay and lesbian, because we are everywhere.
And according to Ann Northrup, running everything. Right.
That's right.
Our next film, Tongues Untied, uses graphic and explicit images to depict the struggles of gay men of color. It's a powerful and some would say disturbing work, challenging gay men of color to look not only to the rest of the community for support, but to each other and within themselves as well. Afterward, we'll return to discuss the troubling issues raised in Tongues Untied, produced by Marlon Riggs.